We were first interested in this more than 10 years ago when we published the first paper on the role of BCL2 in acute myeloid leukemia. And at that time, we used the predecessor compound, ABT737, as a tool compound. So we showed the importance of BCL2 in AML. But then the clinical candidate came along, which was similar to ABT737 called Venetoclax, and it did make it to trials in CLL. But because it caused thrombocytopenia, it could never make it to AML trials and any acute leukemias. And even in CLL, its efficacy was limited by the fact that the platelets have dropped. And this was on target side effects, so it couldn't be really worked out. So fortunately, the company worked on the engineering the molecule, and then they came up with this new compound called the ABT199, which is now known as Venetoclax. So we got involved very quickly because we kept in touch with the company, and we did the study together with the lab of Tony Litai and my lab in acute myeloid leukemia, published in Cancer Discovery, where we showed again that even the compound that has no BCL-XL activity but only BCL2 is very effective in leukemic models, preclinical leukemic models. So that provided the basis for the first clinical trial, which was a phase 2 trial in acute myeloid leukemia with a dose which was already established in chronic lymphocytic leukemia. So this trial enrolled 32 patients, but these were heavily pretreated patients, and about 20% only had complete response rates. But almost 50% had some benefit with reduction of the blast count. So the compound was clearly active, but not as active as a single agent. And so fortunately, the next step was either to drop it or to take it forward. And we sort of convinced the AbbVie, and we worked together, of course, to take it forward. And they took it in the frontline setting in elderly patients who could not get intensive chemotherapy. And they took it in combination with hypomethylating agents, either azacitidine or decitabine, depending on the center. So both combinations were tested. And this trial is still ongoing right now as a transition to a phase 3 trial. But preliminary results from the cohort that has been treated over 100 patients shows very high response rate, over 65% on average in all different types of combinations or dose groups, pretty much the same. And the responses were fairly durable with about 70% of patients being still alive at 1 year, which is for elderly population is quite achievement, even though it's clearly we would like to be at higher levels. So this is very encouraging, and as I said, the compound went into phase 3 study, randomized study with azacitidine plus minus Venetoclax. At the same time, there was a parallel study with low-dose cytarabine, which ran mainly in Australia because physicians in states don't use as much low-dose RC. They don't find it as effective as hypomethylating agents. And very spectacular, that trial also showed very high response rate, about 60%, and not much side effects. None of these trials showed a lot of toxicity, which was most amazing because patients were able to tolerate this very well. And this trial is now also transitioned to the randomized phase 3 trial. So there are now these 2 trials are ongoing. Of course, it will take another few years till we complete the trials. But we are very hopeful that if the data stay the same they were in the sort of preliminary phase, then this could lead to the approval of this drug in combinations in acute myeloid leukemia. So we're very excited about that. And these are elderly patients, so we haven't tested this compound yet in younger patients who generally have better outcomes. But we can always improve on the outcomes. So we have now initiated the trials with intensive chemotherapy in younger AML. And so these are just starting right now. And we also proposed a lot of targeted therapy combinations, which will be starting in the near future as well.